that gives more substance and guidance and meaning to the provisions of the Home Rule Charter. For purposes of tonight, over the next few minutes, I just want to give you an overview of what this request for proposal has in it. Basically, there's a couple components to it, and the funding will be a grant request that's going to come from the city manager and Bethany, who are helping, Bethany Williams, who are helping to put together the strategic management planning program grant request. And I got the sense that it would either be submitted this month or next month for a grant of $30,000, among other grant requests for implementation of recommendations in the strategic management planning program that deal with an upgrade to your financial management and other information technology equipment. The main component with this grant application, with this request for proposal for consultants to respond back, and I believe the deadline is mid-December, so it's about a 2-week turnaround time. One is working with the Government Study Commission to help draft the Home Rule Charter. And I spell out in the request for proposal the general provisions that would be included in the Home Rule Charter. And in the request for proposal, which I'll call an RFP, I indicate that the consultant will be helping draft a charter that follows the council manager form of government, basically because that's the sense I got from the commission, that that's the option that you want to pursue with regard to the two selections that we have spoken about, which is most closely aligned with what you have now with the third-class city code commission form of government. And I don't want to mix up the term commission when I'm talking about the third-class city council is a commission form of government as elected officials. You are also elected officials as a government study commission, studying the existing form of government and deciding to draft a home rule charter. But you're also, as a governing body, called a commission to look specifically at home rule. So the request for proposal, which I'll call an RFP, one main component is to draft the request for proposal to work with you. And there's deadlines set for when the charter draft will be completed, which is June of next year, in order to set it up for getting it to the county election office no more than, or let me rephrase, no less than 60 days before the November 2 election next year.
Somebody trying to join the meeting?
I'm not sure.
No, Stephanie has control of that. She'll handle it.
Okay. The second component is another requirement that's part of the Home Rule Charter, and that is called a final report.
Hello?
Hello, we hear you. Okay.
Yeah, if anybody just joins, please mute your mic because it'll distort everything. Until you have a question, then you can unmute.
I've muted everybody.
Okay, thanks.
The second key component is a final report that's required under the Home Rule Charter Optional Plans Law. That is a companion document to the Home Rule Charter that you will be submitting to the Beaver County Election Office to place the question on the ballot November 2, 2021. And in the request for proposal, I enumerate the required provisions of a final report, which really reduces to writing the proceedings that you have undertaken up to the point where the Home Rule Charter goes to the Beaver County Election Office, documenting what process you went through and the decisions that you made and the deliberations that you undertook in order to recommend this charter to the voters. Those are the two key components that will be sent to the county election office to tee up the charter referendum question next November. Again, the draft charter and the final report are two documents that combined go to the county election office at least 60 days before before November election of 2021. Should the election succeed, that the voters approve the charter, the next step, and that will be starting in 2022, is the drafting of an administrative code, which I mentioned again is a companion document, or it's a supplement to the Home Rule Charter to give more substance, guidance, direction, and more of an elaboration on the provisions that are in the Home Rule Charter. Because a Home Rule Charter, generally speaking, is a framework, it's a skeleton, it's an outline of the new form of government that you will be entering into should it be approved by the voters. And the administrative code, again, gives meaning and substance and guidance and direction to that charter as a companion document. There are dates in the request for proposal where that administrative code should be in a draft form, ready to present not only to the city council, but also to the public. And it's to be adopted by an ordinance, not the voters, but an ordinance that may be amended from time to time as circumstances and conditions dictate going forward.
This sounds like a whole nother meeting.
Well, it's
But yeah, we're
it's-
gonna have to do one where you can like really get deep with that.
correct. It's
Yeah.
also, it's a group of people that city council appoints that may be members of the Government Study Commission and additional interested citizens. The one in Braddock that I'm working with now is partly citizens and partly Government Study Commission members that worked on drafting the charter. It's really up to, the mayor who makes the appointments. And again, it's drafted before the charter goes into effect, which technically could be in 2023.
Okay.
So I'll be sending out the RFPs. The RFPs will come back to me. I will share them with the Government Study Commission. If necessary, you may want to conduct interviews, but it's a professional service. It's not the lowest responsible bidder where you have to go with the lowest price. It's basically matching need that you have to draft these documents with the expertise that the consultant offers with regard to their ability to work within this framework.
Okay. So in the meantime, we do still have access to yourself and Debbie, correct?
Correct. Yes, certainly me.
All right.
And I think Debbie continued to offer her services also for free. One of the RFPs will go to Debbie, as I think you are aware. And the other one is going to go to the consultant I'm working with now in Braddock Borough in Allegheny County that I work with to help draft the charter, that it was approved, and now drafting the administrative code. I'm struggling to think of a third consultant that I think would be equally qualified. And the one I'm thinking about, we've had experience with before, and it's an attorney whose price comes in way too high. And I'm not sure I want to go through that exercise again because it might be redundant. But again, it's going to at least go to two consultants.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I'll keep you apprised as the process unfolds. If you
Thank
want me to email you the RFP again tomorrow, I can do that as well.
Yeah, could you please do that? I'm not sure that I saw that in my email.
No
Thank you.
problem. I will do that.
And we are going to now go into our guest for the evening, which would be City Manager Charles Jones, the Community Development Director Bethany Williams, and the City Clerk Paula Durish. They're here to field any questions about their job, in what they know from their jobs the city runs, and what maybe if you want to ask what they feel is working, what they feel might need to be improved. They're just here to field questions. And if each of you would like to just say a little bit about yourself before you start taking questions, I'd appreciate it.
I'll defer to the ladies. I have no problem. I'm originally called City Maybe you can keep the police here. Are they able to hear me okay?
No, actually, could you speak up a little bit? We can't hear you on the Zoom now that there's a bunch of people in the room.
Charles Jones, you hear me okay now?
A little better.
Okay.
Not that great.
Use your outdoor voices.
If you can move that.
Well, then it changes the whole view of the,
My name is Charles Jones.
there you go.
and- How's that, better?
There you go.
There you go.
Better?
Yeah.
That's better.
Okay. Charles Jones, previously the chief of police here, been a city manager for about 4 years. I graduated from Geneva College with a degree in organizational development and leadership. I've just been appointed to the Leadership Government Academy for Pittsburgh region. I'm an executive board member for the Beaver County Chamber. So I'm affiliated with a lot of different organizations. I'm on the Government Affairs Committee. So I work with an awesome team here in the city. We have a great team that we're all working together. And I'm real excited. Thank you guys for inviting me to come here. And I'm like to hear kind of what you're feeling and what some of the questions you might have. That's all I have.
I'm Bethany Williams. I'm the Director of Community Development for the city. I'm an independent contractor that works 25 hours a week and fill in the gaps of local government. So I work with businesses and nonprofits to kind of help navigate our governmental processes and make it a little bit easier. If a business wants to open, I help that process. If an organization wants to figure out how to expand or improve, I'm usually part of that process as well. But really just kind of the public relations arm in a lot of ways. So I kind of do whatever makes me easy to do to help relationships with the city and the people who live in it.
Paula, you're not really on camera. You're
That's
hiding.
okay. Goodness, I don't have as much to say as the two of them, but I'm Paula George. I have worked here since I graduated from Beaver Falls High School in 1977, which makes me 43 years here. I have done every job. When I came here, I was a floater, so I learned a lot of the jobs before I even had a permanent job here. But I've done all the jobs here, even including sometimes the city manager when we didn't have one, a job that I would never do permanently because I have enough stuff to do as the city clerk. But yeah, I'm very excited to hear what anybody asks of what my day is like. And I can tell you it's different every day.
Okay. Questions from the public or the commission? Teresa Omagrosso will be talking.
Floor is yours.
I would like each of you to give a small synopsis of what you see your job description as. Just for those of us who really don't know. Yeah, Bethany, you gave a pretty good with helping, businesses with your Nick and Paula, if you could give us a
Yeah. Basically, my role is I'm appointed by council, service pleasure council, the mayor. And basically what I do is I handle day-to-day operations. So I cover everything from managing budgets and dealing with the public, working with Bethany in community development, business development. We work a lot with, I mentioned some of the organizations I'm affiliated with. So we're part of marketing. Primarily day-to-day, what I mostly function as is I work, once again, with all these departments, the road department, the sewage treatment plant, the police department, the fire department, and the administrative staff here in the city. So we have a pretty full schedule. Paul, we'll tell you, we keep ourselves pretty busy throughout the day. There's a lot of times we're one of the last ones to leave the building, sometimes first one day. So, so I just handle pretty much day-to-day management. The mayor, when he comes in throughout the week, I keep him abreast of what's going on in the city. We provide information for council regarding working with all the resolutions and ordinances. So that's just one to get a tip of the iceberg of a lot of the different things, but to give you an idea of what we do. So Paul, I'll let you go from there.
I started actually whenever I would do something in the office, I actually started to make a list, but things like happen so fast, like I don't have time to do that kind of, to write everything that I do. But as our city manager said, I also work with and for the mayor and city council as well as side by side with him. I do all of the agendas for the council meetings. I prepare packets for all of them. I sometimes write resolutions and ordinances, just ones that aren't as detailed as what our city solicitor does. I sign all of the checks for all the city accounts. I do workers' comp. I do all the insurance for all the employees, whether they're a new employee or someone who has retired or resigned. I also deal with the public. I work with attorneys that when someone files a lawsuit against the city, I work with all the attorneys to get all that straightened out. I do all the agreements for like our snow, our garbage service, when the police department works housing, they work the school, they work a couple of the outlining communities for police service. I do those agreements. I do the minutes for the meetings. I record them. I type them. I file them.
Does it all.
She keeps all of our headlines straight.
I do all of the advertising for all of the meetings in the city, the budget readings. Like we do ordinances require 2 readings and a resolution 1 for a council meeting. There are some things that you have to advertise prior to the first reading of the ordinance, and then you have to advertise that you've done the first reading, and when you're going to do the second reading, I advertise all the meetings for all the organizations, all the business district, like anybody who holds meetings, any organizations for the city, I advertise all of that. I'm just a very busy woman.
Okay, well, that helps.
Mhm.
It's like my day-to-day is usually grant writing, fielding questions from businesses and organizations, usually navigating our process. So a business will send me a question, and then I'll turn around and work internally with our team, and then take back with them so they don't get kind of confused by all the city jargon. Because we speak a language in this office to each other that makes sense to us, but then someone from the public comes in and they get frustrated and confused by the zoning process or other processes. And so usually we're navigating the process and then communicating back. So fielding those questions, working with organizations in the city to help them kind of meet their needs of whatever events they're doing or whatever the case is, marketing, social media, that's what I do, the website. So anytime we need to communicate out something like meeting dates or things happening in the city. So kind of just all of the public communication stuff on that side. But every day is very different depending on what the needs are for the city.
Any other questions? Anyone on Zoom want to unmute and ask a question?
Yes. Okay, so hi, Mick. Hi, Bethany. Hi, Paula.
Hello.
Yeah, it's great to see you. And I don't like the Zoom thing, but it definitely feels safer for me sitting by myself around my table. So thank you for setting this up, Regina and Bethany, for the details. So my question, the question that I want each of you to answer, and I think I want Paula to answer first, then Bethany, then Mick. And as you know, we're sitting down to contemplate writing a home rule charter. So my question is, so far, the 3 of you and me, we've all been bound by what the third class city code says we can and cannot do. And we're particularly looking at the structural elements right now. So you know that the third class city code says you have 4 councilmen, you have a mayor, blah, 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 blah. Each of the councilmen is the head of a section of the departmental workings of the city, so on and so forth. So you know all that. My question to you is, if you could throw out the third class city code, are there some suggestions that you would offer us? Think about doing this instead of what we have been doing under the third class city code. So Paula, what would you say, as you've worked here many, many years, and you've kind of seen where there have been bottlenecks or things that kind of go awry a little bit of one sort or another, what advice would you offer us to consider writing into a change of structure under a home rule charter?
You've probably heard me say, as many other people, that third class city code is my Bible.
Right.
For anything that goes on in the city, I always refer to that if something is going on, like right now, when you're asking me to be specific, I just know at times when someone says about doing something, it clicks in my head right away that that's not allowed. Let me check my third class city code and see what it says. There are probably many things that I think, not daily, but things that go on, and I think we're so restricted by that third class city code that at times it would be nice to be able to bend that a little bit and do something else. But of course, right now, I can't think of anything specific.
About like the vision for
There, Jones, yes, thank you very much. One of the things, we just recently had bids for paving, and we received, I think, 5 or 6 bids. The third class city code requires that you have to accept the lowest bidder, not necessarily a company that you know or that you know and maybe doesn't have a good reputation, that there is someone that you would rather have do that paving for you. The third class city code doesn't allow you to do that. There's things that if you want to do, it has to be under a certain amount of money or over a certain amount of money.
Okay, that's good. That's what we're looking for, the kind of specific things that you folks run into that you say, we could do this differently if we were writing the charter for ourselves rather than following the third class city code. So you had the hardest thing because you had to jump right in there. You were first to answer the question, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to do that. So, and so feel free to jump back in. If Bethany and Mick, while they're talking, if you think of something, you say, that's fine. You don't have to, just dive back in and answer.
Okay.
Bethany, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think as we were looking at home rule charter, the taxation question was really the one that stuck with me about the impact on our community. And, if we could lessen it in one area and increase it in another area that wouldn't be as negatively impacting, that's something I think that's probably the most important thing for me, is kind of looking at how we can restructure how we tax, because it's very limited in the third class city code. But I mean, I don't deal very much with the regulations of those things. I mean, mostly Paula will say we can't do that, and we'll redirect it to do it differently. But I think that the most important question I found as we were researching this process was really that taxation question, to kind of just restructure how things come in, and if we could increase it in certain areas that wouldn't be as negatively impacting to our lowest income people, and still meet our needs as a city and still be able to kind of grow with the inflation of the area. But Yeah, I mean, I think as they talk, I might come up with something else, but that was the first thing that popped into my head that feels like the most important area to really look at.
Thanks, Bethany. Yep. Mick?
Yes, sir, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank the members of the commission because, this is a voluntary, commitment that you guys have done, and I just really appreciate your commitment to this because, from our perspective, from the city, the mayor's present with us as well. In particular to this home rule, discussion, I think it should be noted that we as a city, and Michael Foreman can confirm, we as a city seeing gaps in how things are done. So we solicited and went out and appropriated this grant, and we're going to move into the second phase because we want to make things right for the citizens. We want to give the citizens an opportunity to, which your role is right now. So I want to thank you guys for participating as members. So to answer your question, I think one of the things that followers have laid on, Bethany both laid the groundwork. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen in my period of time as a manager has been the financial structure and management the way we do internally. And I think that's something that definitely needs to be have it hard, take a real good look at because we just got too many restrictions on from different levels of different positions, and I think that's causing a lot of the confusion, I guess, with even setting budgets and things like that. So I would say, from my perspective, I think a more efficient way of doing our financial management is very, very critical.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
So I do have another question, but I don't want to dominate. So let me have other people ask questions and then I'll take another shot. But that's a good start. Thank you.
Hi, this is Cindy Cook. If I could ask the three of you, I've heard what is an issue, but what would work? What do you see this working in Beaver Falls the way the system is currently?
I'll take that. What's working is just the pure effort of all of us working together as a team. We've made some major changes in the last several years of restructuring internally how we do operations. Simple things as far as, like Bethany mentioned earlier, we created a business team concept, and basically what that is we work together with code along with community development and city management office when new business opportunities come in. Instead of what we ran into before when I first came here, somebody would come in and want to start a business and they would, no offense against the code department, but they were met with a lot of, you can't do that, you can't, you won't. And we had a lot of people walking out the doors not wanting to put business here because they were constantly told that they couldn't do nothing. So we restructured that now when we're saying we're open for business and we're more open for people coming in and having those discussions, eliminating bureaucracy and to make businesses. And we've got a lot of great opportunities. Probably in this last year, believe it or not, even with COVID in place, we probably identified close to 10 businesses that are open or going to be opening here in downtown. And we've got a lot of great opportunities on some other major projects that are coming along. And so that's working for us. Once again, we restructured our code department. We now have a fire chief who's now the head of fire department and code operations. So that's working for us. I just can't say enough. Internally, we have a great working team of department heads. So yeah, I think a lot of the great work is being taken place. Yeah, so I hope that answered your question.
Yeah,
okay.
I can say too, in my other hours of work a week, I work for the Beaver County Regional Council of Government. So I've seen how townships and boroughs operate in the county. And one of the things I really appreciate about the city and how it functions is really the model of our council, having the mayor with 4 council members, all being department chairs, being able to have one person to go to on council to talk to about what's going on in your area, and they can represent you to the rest of council, with having the mayor being able to kind of float in between and kind of know everything that's going on. That's been really functional for us here in the city, where I feel like I know who to talk to as an employee. I know like what my lane is when I need to figure out how to answer questions. I know in other communities, they have something like 10 council people and a mayor, and it's really hard to get decisions done and made, you know, in that context because you have too many cooks in the kitchen. So I think the number of 5 seems to work really well for us. And I just think we have a really good mix of people currently on council, but, you know, as things change, you know, you don't have as many positions turning over at once. So it's a slower kind of transition into new leadership here, which tends to help kind of grow alongside of each other. We are only learning 1 or 2 new people instead of 5 or 6 new people. So I really do like our model of council here in the city.
Thank you.
Any other questions anywhere, Zoom or in the room?
I do. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
This is Michael Anderson, by the way. Mick, the question I have for you, which I'll probably have for all of our visitors, is that the financial assessment that was done, or the financial audit of the city that was done, in that document, in the summary of that document, there was 2 pages. And there was like, I think, maybe eight recommendations that the firm had made for the city to try to help itself avoid Chapter 47. And I was wondering if the city had time to take a look at those, and if they implemented anything or had planned to in the future.
I don't have it in front of me. I believe there's a copy, but I do recall some of the items that were listed. And basically, talking about restructuring, and once again, I get friends to the mayor. We've actually worked with the mayor on restructuring a lot of the internal things. And one of the biggest ones was in the financial portion of that. Pardon me, I get multiple talking to the map. So what we did is we actually, it was probably the last couple of years ago, we made an internal change with the financial and accounts manager, and that would have been Kevin Postleman. And he's the one that's he's doing a fantastic job managing those accounts, and we've got a lot more efficiency on how we're preparing budgets and how we're watching our spending and all those things. So I want to commend him for that. So in particular to the recommendations that are identified, once again, I don't have that in front of me, but I know for a fact we definitely have implemented changes internally to make, like I said, our financial and accounts department a lot more efficient.
Yeah, and I will say too, we are starting the process of writing the grant for the phase 2 implementation. We just met with Michael Foreman about it to talk about what are the first projects that we're going to be submitting to be able to get some funding, including the home rule charter consultant as part of that. But there's also, you know, putting all of our codes into digital formats so people can look it up online. There's pavement management programs. There's a bunch of kind of technology software upgrades that'll help kind of streamlining some of our communications within our current email systems and things like that. And so some of the things that were recommended within the document are going to need some financial support. So we'll submit that really quickly here. Our goal is to get it in the next couple of weeks, and that's aspirational, and we'll see if we can do it. But if we can coordinate that in this time, then hopefully by the new year, we'll get some sort of answer and be able to move forward with some more major implementation of those recommendations. One of those is a community development program that will invest in certain catalyst projects to help them with some technical assistance to get off the ground. Like our neighborhood North Museum of Play would get some technical assistance put in, like a business plan that will help them create a profit loss structure so that we can actually launch the innovation district in our downtown corridor. So some of the things that we've talked about with the consultant of saying, how do we raise more income by creating a more profitable downtown district, that'll be implemented through that plan, you know, to help us be able to put together a plan to do that better and launch it well. So there's a whole long list of things that we have to apply under $200,000 for this upcoming grant, but that's $200,000 worth of work that we'll be able to get done in the next year
One final comment, I'll say I see a bookstore opened up down on 7th Avenue, and I haven't,
It's exciting. They're open for a month and then they're hoping to open permanently in the new year, which is great.
I haven't had a chance to stop in yet, but that's good to see.
You know, and I'd like to add to that, I'm glad you mentioned that, because talking about how we were trying to do things to make things more, open to the public. Normally, under normal circumstances, that bookstore should have never happened under, occupancies and different things. So we work behind the scenes to try to make that, it's a pop-up, and that's what we're trying to encourage, to generate energy in here. And that's one of those perfect examples of, normally, under normal circumstances, that's not going to happen. But we work together with our code department and then our third-party commercial industry to say, hey, can we do this? And we removed a lot of the bureaucracy and made that happen.
That's good.
We're real excited about that.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Are we ready to come back to Doug yet? I think we can come back to you, Doug. Nobody else is jumping in.
Okay, I'm unmuted, so here I go. Another question that I wanted to ask was, one of the things that we've talked that with Debbie Grass's insight and Michael Foreman's insight, they've urged us to consider, I would say, a tweaking of the current structure. Bethany, I do agree that I think the system's working well now, but the particular thing that they're asking us to consider, so I'd like you guys to give input to this, is in the third class city code, each of the council members and the mayor has a responsibility over certain departments. And their counsel is that can often muddy the water. It makes the council members get into the nitty gritty of operations, and their thinking is that it might be better for council and the mayor to be policy makers, and then for the manager, the city manager, to oversee policy implementation, and not to kind of make it unclear by having the council members be both policy setters and then involved in implementation. And I've shared with them my own personal experience. I've very much enjoyed getting to know the fire department and the code department and working in those areas, but I have no fireman expertise or no code expertise, and suddenly I'm placed in charge of those departments. And so that has made me think about, in a home rule charter, would we want to change that and have the council and the mayor be policy makers and setters? They would establish policies and have the manager then oversee the implementation of those policies through the city. And Michael Foreman, if I'm mischaracterizing that, feel free to chime in. But probably I'll go back to Mick first of all on that. Although Paula, I think you might have some things to say about that, and Bethany too. So I don't excluding anybody, but maybe Mick first of all.
No problem. Did you want Mr. Foreman to speak before I do, or how do you want to do that?
Michael
Foreman, did I characterize this avenue of thinking well enough.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. So based on what you're saying, yeah, especially someone that's involved with it day to day, we're pretty much doing that now, I would say. But I understand what you're saying. Sometimes we do run across where there is a little bit of, I guess, confusion sometimes, as like from day, like from if I had I deal with the managers of the department heads, I guess is a better way to say, every day. But I think that's, I guess I'm pretty much doing that now. So I don't really know how to answer that. But I would just say that the departments probably appreciate the fact that there's efficiency in being able to have someone on site every day instead of having to call a council member and get that answer. I don't know if that makes sense.
I'm in agreement with Nick, and I feel that council members should be involved with the departments. They should know what is going on in each of those departments. The department heads do come to talk to Nick a lot. I think if council, I'm not quite sure that the policies or procedures that council, they would have to spend a lot of time in our building to see what goes on every day to be able to write policies and procedures that I know Mick would be able to enforce, but I think council would have to spend a lot of time here to see exactly what it is that should be in place that they would want him to enforce and the department heads to follow as well.
Yeah, I feel like
I think, let me change and say, that there may be a little confusion there. It's not, it would be to try to lessen that idea of council members getting into the nitty gritty and, you know, give the city manager and then through the city manager to the department heads, you know, broader parameters of what you want to have done. And then the city manager would work with the departments on the specific policies. So I know what you're thinking about with regard to policies, but it wouldn't be that. It would be actually the reverse of that. I think it would be more along what Mick's saying is there would be a person, the person day to day on site would be the city manager, and he would be, or she would be empowered to, you know, run the city, and then the council members would make the, you know, the broad ideas about what you want to have happen and what direction you want to go and all that sort of thing. So it's just, I think it's a way to try to be, it is a way to try to be a bit more efficient and rather than have a lot of different people in charge. I appreciated Mick's comment about finances because I think I agree with him that we need more efficiencies in the financial end. I would like to see a chief financial officer or something like that, where there would be one person you could go to that would have their finger on the financial pulse of the city and would be managing that. But yeah, I appreciate the input. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, Doug, if I can jump in on that question too, I wonder if this is just institutionalizing the way that it currently works at the city. Because I think as you were talking, every time you would say a comment, I'd be like, well, I think that's how it functions right now, where Mick really does manage the day-to-day, you know, he manages the issues that come up for each department individually. And then he tends to clue in the council members on what's going on in their particular department. I mean, whether or not that's written in the third class or the home rule charter, that would say, you know, that the council members wouldn't be assigned to a department You know, I don't know that that matters to this current group of leadership. I think it's just a question of, you know, as leadership changes over the years moving forward, how you'd like for that to function. And so, I mean, I think the personalities and the way that it currently works right now is that the council really does trust Mick to deal with those kinds of issues throughout the day and keep them informed, which he does. And then, you know, they kind of problem solve when necessary. But the only hesitation I think I feel on that is that, you know, like if you want to know how to, you know, fix a supply chain problem, you should probably talk to the person who's working in the supply chain. And I think what my fear is with changing or pulling council members out of specific departments is that you're not going to have someone who's really targeted into a certain set of issues that can represent that well on council. And I feel like it might actually cause some distance between a council member's understanding of what's going on in the department because they're not as focused in on certain issues. I think what's worked well for us is that, you know, Chucky knows the Public Works Department really well, and he advocates for their needs when it comes to council meeting time. So, you know, Pat needs a new piece of equipment or needs to change some policy in order to, you know, make things work better. He has someone who goes and he talks to about it, and then Chucky goes and represents him on council. You know, and I feel the same way, you know, being able to talk to the mayor and talk to Kevin, you know, whenever I need to about issues or whatever the case is, you know, when it comes to my department. And so I think, you know, the focus in on specific departments gives an expertise to the council members that is actually kind of nice for us as employees to feel like there's someone who's got our department's back when we're representing it in a policy making decision where, you know, if we're asking questions about policy for the fire department, I mean, you, Doug, would be the person that would be advocating for that or the needs of your department, and be able to talk to your fellow council members, whether it's an executive session or whatever the case is, be able to advocate for that well. It feels like there's just a little bit more of a specialist kind of position in that way. It doesn't mean that you have to know everything about the functions of a fire department. It means that you're able to at least elaborate that to council well on behalf of the department you represent. So that's my only fear, is just kind of distancing council from the staff in a way that could interrupt kind of the way that things function now. But I don't know how much that matters, but other than the long-term effect of new leadership coming in, having a different role to play, who might treat things differently than we have as a staff.
If I could add, and the key thing is speaking from the manager's role, it all comes down to personality. We get along, and so it works. But like Bethany said, it might not work to put a different manager or a different person in conflict. And one of the key things is, speaking from a manager's role, I believe in checks and balances. So I'm just concerned, I'm speaking from a manager's role. If you isolate, as Bethany said, you isolate council, totally isolate them, and the manager has, lack of better term, full control of everything. I'm just concerned that there's going to be a breakdown in communicating that to council, because it's only going to be one way of communication. So that's something to consider. I would just be, because as has been stated, I'm constantly on the phone with the mayor and council. I talk to the mayor once a day, and I keep them abreast of what's going on. I talk to the council members when they're having issues with it, or not issues, or there might be information they need to know from their individual departments. And I usually seek you guys for guidance. Okay, here's what I did. What do you recommend? And then I make a decision from there. Now, there's some things I don't have an opportunity to call you, and you guys, you as council have given me I guess the blessing to be able to make those decisions spot on, and that works. But once again, I'm just concerned, as like Bethany stated, I'm just concerned that if you consolidate that into one role, it's just too much power at one place.
Thanks. This discussion is very helpful. Thank you.
This is Cindy Cook again. I can agree and disagree with the conversation. Is it possible to do some tweaking of our current council without going to the home charter? I mean, because it's like you said, if you have different council members that are working to learn or to have knowledge about what each department is doing. So it's a good thing, Doug, that you're working with the fire department. That gives you opportunity to learn what they're doing and to go out and seek more information that can be helpful to them. I think it is important when we talk about the financial piece of it, that you have a CFO or someone that has financial knowledge to help run the city. So that way they would know how to go about finding funds for the city instead of us saying that we're going to be going bankrupt. So those are things that, I mean, you speak a lot about, the good things that we're doing here in the city, but yes, there could be some tweaking that could help it without, changing the whole model.
Yeah, I agree with you, Cindy. I think that's when we were looking at the home rule charter to see, if it was something that sounded like a worthwhile thing to even try to pursue. Really, it was more of the financial piece and rewriting that part of it, more so than the structure of council. Because, I mean, the current group of people work really well together, and that's something that is not always going to be true, as, we grow up and move on. But I think the challenge is, right now is our financial situation and that model of our financial stability. And so I think our biggest concern is that we need a new model of how to manage our finances, and that chief financial officer feels really comfortable as an idea to us as city officials, because we feel like that's a gap in our services right now. It's really feeling like we've got someone running the financial management of the city that is doing it well. So, I mean, our treasurer's office does it, as well as they can, but I think someone coming in as like having a long background of being able to balance the books and make sure that we're giving good advice to council as they're passing budgets, I mean, that's really would be beneficial. And so I think for us, there's some areas of the city that may not need to be changed through a home rule charter, but in order to change the financial structure, we would have to pass the home rule charter. So it just matters, which parts we want to keep and which parts we don't. As a city, and you as residents who are running this commission get to decide which pieces are which that get added into that. So
I didn't,
it'll be interesting for us to hear what your recommendations are for what you think works and what doesn't.
this is Michael. I didn't think you could do pieces, like partial third rule and partial parts of the city.
Absolutely. Absolutely can.
Well, that's a question for another evening. So,
Well, Michael Foreman can quickly either say, yes, we can, or no, we can't on that one, but I'm sure we can.
are you saying can't or can?
I think we can do it in pieces, but we have Michael Foreman here who can say, yes, that's correct, or no, that's incorrect.
That's certainly an option that you can pursue.
You mean, explain that, Michael, if you wouldn't mind.
The
Part of the city government would be third rule.
proposed home rule charter can keep your commission form of government in place the way it is now. And the major change that would be in the home rule charter would be giving you greater taxing power and greater taxing flexibility, without really changing the structure of your city council the way you operate now.
Okay, thank you.
But I also want to add that very few home rule charters maintain the form of government under which they came from. And by doing so, you're partially defeating the purpose of home rule, which I'm literally saying home rule. You are moving away from the code from what you came from, to be able to control your own destiny with regard to the drafting of a home rule charter that normally does change the structure of the governing body with regard to the duties and responsibilities of the governing body that are shifted to a manager who is hired and fired by the governing body. And under the home rule charters that I'm more familiar with, coming out of a third class city model, the pivot is that council is the policy and decision-making body. And the manager, and I'm just repeating what Doug has been saying, but I want to reinforce the importance that you need to be a little more open-minded about what you think may work now. Think back and think in the future that a home rule charter becomes your local constitution under which you operate. And as it was mentioned, sometimes the process is driven by personalities rather than the facts and the issues. So with a possible pivot, you're shifting council from being overseers of their respective departments, where they may or may not have any expertise or even desire to oversee it, to the manager, who is normally hired based upon their experience, their ability, their expertise, and their background, so that you have one key central administrative officer that everybody can point to as one that implements the day-to-day operations based on council's decisions. Generically speaking, governing bodies make decisions. Sorry. So I don't want to belabor the point, but yes, if you want to keep your commission form of government where council members continue to be directors and they delegate their duties to the manager and can undelegate their duties to the manager, and have 5 separate budgets that you coalesce into one budget document, that is certainly an option. And if you just want to pursue greater taxing power, that's certainly a choice that you can make and write it into the home rule charter.
I do think that's a good clarification. I think that what we're saying from our end is I think that the way that you're presenting it, Michael, is how it functions here, even though it's not necessarily how it's written in our third class city code, where the council does lean on Nick for dealing with the day-to-day operations. And so I think the institutionalization of that is perfectly fine. I think the only reason I expressed my hesitation was just because I'd like to see council still tied into what's going on in the ground level, but it doesn't have to be institutionalized within the third class city code. I think the way that it currently functions in the city is that Mick handles 90% of all of that, and the council members come in and manage it kind of through Mick and with Mick and alongside. So writing it in the code is very different than how it operates. Like the mentality we're trying to talk about with that, connecting the council members to departments, the functions of it is really that Mick has been doing that for a long time since he took office.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add really, but I guess my concern is, I think even in the time that I've been a paying attention person involved, there have been people that are in certain roles that aren't suited for those roles, and as a result of that, things suffer. And so, but unfortunately, your tenure in that position is determined by your election term. So, and I'll be honest too, I think for the most part, most of us that vote for people on council have no idea what council members are even doing. And if they're good at it or not, we just know what we think and we just vote for that. But there's a difference between somebody who serves at on the ballot and somebody who serves, that can be hired and fired. And so I guess what you said about having checks and balances, it seems to me that that's a pretty good point in favor of saying that maybe the person who really where the buck stops should be the person who is, who's not just serving at the pleasure of the electorate, but also has a responsibility to the position that can be removed at any given moment. Because I think, if you're in the wrong role, I've been in the wrong role plenty of times in my life. We have great people in place right now, but if somebody else is voted in next year that doesn't care or that doesn't have this, that doesn't want to work with you or anybody else on the team, then what? And so, I like the flexibility that we have, but I wonder how we keep that in a way that, that is sustainable and protects the city from people's whims and fancies, I guess.
Well, if I could add, and I thank you for that. As Mike Foreman has stated, the key thing to always remember is that council has the mayor has the ability, whatever structure you do, even now, they have the ability. I work at the pleasure of the mayor and council. They could pull me in to tomorrow and say, we no longer need your services. So in saying what Mr. Foreman has raised, as long as you have that in place, and even moving to the, where you're saying, you create a, more of a management, what we're doing now, but you put more of the, responsibility, like you said, the buck stops here with the managers. I think regardless of whatever decision you make, the mayor and council still have that. If I'm not correct, Mr. Foreman, even moving from this and even into the, where it's more of a council policy versus the management. Are you following me?
Yes, yes. Basically, you have two things here. You have what I'll call a symbiotic relationship between council and the manager, where both need each other to fulfill respective and specific roles. And in doing so, you serve at the pleasure of the appointing power, which is city council. And you are the one you as the manager are the one that go back and forth with council with regard to making decisions collectively. You don't become separate and apart and remote. It really becomes, again, a partnership, a collection. It's a partnership, and it's an ongoing relationship that, in a sense, there's a firewall that is, invisibly constructed between the council that votes on matters and you, the manager, that implement and convey that to the department heads, and you oversee those activities and those efforts and those implementation activities, so that collectively you're really tied to the hip with council, and you report back to council, whether and you can still communicate with them on a daily basis. But again, the difference is that the directors as a body interact with you. Another difference is that when I say directors, I mean the council members as directors of departments. The governing body would deal with you as a governing body. They would no longer deal with you as individual directors of departments, because that would shift to you, the manager. So you're really, in a sense, putting up a firewall and a separation of duties and a check and balance between the two parties.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm just going to throw this out here. I don't want to keep us here all night, but I am in the community a lot because I'm on God knows how many boards and teaching at the high school. And I hear grumblings, and it's usually in regards to the city doesn't do this, the city doesn't do that. They just mismanage the money and da 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 da. So now is the time for anybody who wants to address that, people grumble, but now we have this open forum where they can come ask questions, and we don't have a really big turnout. So I'm just going to put out there for those people that they just feel that it's mismanaged. Would anybody like to speak to that?
Softball.
Well, I think the thing that I would like to address is there's a lot of things that are going on. A lot of people don't know that we're going behind the scenes. For instance, probably a lot of people don't even realize we've secured millions of dollars the last 3 or 4 years in grant funding. We've got the 37th Street ball field. We're working out the final details. We got probably from the community development blocks program. We probably secured close to $500,000 from that. So we're currently engaged with a designer for the library park. We're working with a group of folks for Second Avenue Playground. We're working on, so we've been committed to a lot of those things, let alone a lot of work that we're doing in the downtown. As far as we freely acknowledge that one of our weak points has been financial management. Once again, we're the ones that went out and said, hey, this is a weak spot that needs to be fixed. Hence, that's why we engaged with DCD to secure funding to have us take a look at that, put it in the public's hand to say, we acknowledge that needs to be restructured. So, we have, as far as, like I said, as far as management of funds, we're doing the best that we can with a dwindling tax base where, you don't have, I mean, we've got areas where you have a lot of, nonprofits or organizations that don't pay taxes. But, you know, and the situation that we're dealing with is every year we have to negotiate contracts. And those contracts need increases in their pay. So as that numbers are, you know, climbing as far as percentage increases that we have to negotiate the contract, we're not getting that much more money in to cover those costs. So we're doing the best that we can. And I'm gonna be honest with you, if you look at us on paper, we should have been floating in the water about 10 years ago. That's straight up.
Well, and I think I'm gonna add too, like, I know, I hear myself, no businesses come into the city. It's not that the city doesn't welcome a new business. A lot of the problem is the people who own the building don't wanna rent to anyone, or because we have a third party that we have to deal with, we're dealing with someone right now that wants to put in a business that will cost that business owner over $20,000 to have a business go in because of the restrictions of the building code. Well, an owner's not gonna do that to have someone come in and, you know, not get an astronomical amount of rent from them.
And that's a perfect example we talked earlier, but that's a perfect example. When we are confronted with issues like that, we just go, oh, well, it's a state rule. No, we sit as a team and we say, what can we do to bring this person here? You know, in times past, we're like, okay, it's a state rule. This is not city. A lot of people confuse a lot of the restrictions on city. It's actually 9 times out of 10, it's the state UCC codes that we have to abide by.
And those are things that are not gonna be changed though by home rule charter.
No.
So
No.
we can't, you know, we can't say that's, we're stuck with that no matter what.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And people don't know that. I mean,
Oh,
those are
right.
things that happen internally and the outside world doesn't know that.
Right.
Yeah, and I think something that Mick won't say for himself, but he really inherited a major challenge when he came in a few years ago. Of, you know, there had been leadership in the city that had been kicking the can down the road for a long time. You know, managers who were covering the books and making it look better just to make themselves look good, but it wasn't actually the current financial situation of the city. And Paul has dealt with so many frustrating people over the years of like people who really didn't have the best interest of the city at heart. And so what Mick inherited a couple of years ago was really just this giant mess of city operations that he's been untangling for the last couple of years. And I mean, he's done incredible work to get us all kind of right-sided up and make sure that everything's operating, you know, on the up and up. And his ethics are totally unchallengeable. Like he's the most ethical person that I've ever worked alongside. And so when it comes to these questions, he really sits there and tries to figure out how to do it for the best of the city at all times. And so, I mean, he maintains hope, even though he inherited a sinking ship, you know, and we really stopped managing decline and started instigating growth when he came into leadership, because we really had the person at the helm who was starting to push the city forward. And so what you've seen in progress in the last 3 years in the city is really as a result of having someone who's willing to push it forward and to stop kicking the can down the road and to deal with it. So this home rule conversation came up because we said, man, our financial management is something that we really struggle with and we don't have the pieces in place, and we got all the right pieces in all the other places, but this is one area that we really need help in. And so we were the first ones to kind of put up the white flag and say, please, let's evaluate another solution for our financial situation. And so I think for our part, like what we've always asked the city is to offer us the same transparency as we are hoping to offer them. Come ask questions, come be a part of the process. We constantly have open seats on our committees in the city. And so, you know, if we can get people who are starting to volunteer and get involved, then the understanding of what happens here at the city will come through a little clearer, where, you know, if you serve on the planning commission, if you serve on the rec board, if you serve on, you know, any of these boards that we have available to civil service, you can see what our processes look like and the challenges that we face every day. And so I think where we, as city officials sit now, is that we're really asking the community to step into what we go through every day and help us do it better. But it often doesn't come across that way because I'm not sure if there's a history with the city leadership of kind of having closed door policies, but this current city administration has worked really hard to say, hey, we don't know everything. We don't know what it feels like to be a shop owner on this corner of this block. So please come tell us what it's like, and we'll try to make differences as we're able. And we may not always make the decisions that you agree with or are excited about, but we're trying our hardest to really understand what's going on in the community. My department was created solely as an initiative to get somebody out into the community listening to what's going on, which is innovative and has received accolades from everywhere because City Council was willing to take a risk and throw some money in a different direction for someone to actually go and hear from community members and bring it back to council. And so, I often say that I just listen all the time because that's what they've asked me to do, is like go listen to what people are saying out in the community on social media. Often there's issues that we're addressing that people don't know that we've heard them talk about because they throw it out on social media. I bring it back to City Council and Mick, and we talk about how to address it. So there's a lot of conversation behind the scenes that you guys might not see of us really trying to understand what's going on out in the community, but we need that offered from the community as well to say, we know that you're willing to listen, so we're ready to kind of tell you how things are going and what we need help with, and then we can try to make a difference. But if you don't call us about the issue on your block, it's really hard for us to kind of all of a sudden come up with that in our heads and then deal with your issues. So we work really hard at it, but we do need the same grace from the community to help us know really what's going on. And if there's any questions you guys ever have about what the city is doing, why we're making certain decisions, please come in and ask, because we'd love to talk about it and provide some clarity before, during, or after the decision is made. But it's just, I don't think that's expected from government these days. I think people, their first instinct is to not trust government, and the national narrative is to assume corruption. And so I think for us on a hyper local level, it's really hard to be seen as neighbors who are just trying to make our city a better place. But that's really who we all are, who's currently in this building. So hopefully you guys feel welcomed here and you don't feel like it's a scary place to come in and interact with us, because we all live in town, we care about the city, and we want the welfare of the city to really be hopeful and exciting, and we want to see good things happen here. So if you know how to make that happen, please come talk to us about it.
Thank you. There's no other questions or comments. Like I said, the hour is getting late. I don't want to keep us here too long. I would like to remind everybody that our next meeting is December 17th, and our guest will be Mayor George Quay, Kevin Kunzelman, who is the Accounts and Finance Director for the city, and our own Jerry Ford, who serves on the commission also, but he is also going to speak that night in the capacity of city controller. So any questions that you may have for those three, prepare them between now and December 17th. We will have the link out on Facebook again. And Bethany, there is a YouTube channel. Would you like to share with the people who are listening now? Or will you just post that?
Yeah, we'll post it, but there's a YouTube channel where we post all these Zoom meetings, so you can access any previous things. Also, Faith does post our minutes after they've been approved after every meeting, so you can always see what we're up to. And always, please feel welcome to join us via Zoom or in person.
Thank you. So if there's nothing else, no pressing business, can I have a motion to adjourn? Doug?
Before we do that, and I'll give it to you, I do want to thank Mick and Bethany and Paula for coming tonight, being willing to come and answer our questions. And a great job doing that. And I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Okay, your daughter seconded that. You didn't hear it. Right, thank you.
Good job.
Meeting is adjourned at 8:23, looks like.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Michael Foreman. Good to see you, Cindy.
Thanks, Michael. We'll hopefully see you December 17th.
Thank you, all you guests, for coming from the
Yes,
city.
and thank you, community, for joining us. Thank you.
Very grateful.